Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. So in today's video, I figured, I haven't complained about PSA in about, a month. So I figured today is a good time to, complain some more. But seriously, guys, one of the things that I wanted to do today is adjust actually quite a few different things that have recently happened. Now, what's interesting is that PSA has raised their prices, but in addition to this, there has been a lot of sort of shifting dynamic in the community at large. And so in today's video, what I really wanted to do is not only complain about PSA and how garbage they are at times, but also walk you through some of the major changes to the hobby, including their pricing and those implications that can be derived from the increase in prices. So without further ado, let's go into it. As you can see on screen right now, I have the PSA website up. That's psacard.com. And if I go ahead and click on the Customer Communication Center, which has recently been updated, I figure here is where we can start our conversation for today. So in case you missed it, the Customer Communication Center was one of those new things that PSA established in order to potentially help alleviate some of the questions and some of the concerns that customers of PSA had. So they market it as sort of, a place where you'll get more frequent updates and more transparent updates on the state of the business. And basically what that means is, we want to make sure you have some information in a more timely manner. So as you can see, the website looks really good. In the past, I've commented that I personally wouldn't have directed the business to take this approach. For anyone that knows about web development, this requires a lot of work. Not only that, but it requires a lot of maintenance. And even though the same people who made this website probably aren't the people grading your cards, the problem is that PSA could have dedicated more time and energy to hiring and training staff instead of either, building an internal IT department or alternatively, spending additional resources to build out this website. And you'll see why I take that stance in a little bit, especially as we take a little bit more of a closer look at what exactly they are showing. So the first thing you're met with is this growth history, and as you can see, they're claiming, they've done nearly close to triple the amount of collectibles in about a decade's time. I want everyone to take notice of the fact that there are in fact numbers on the side of this axis that, would mean that you can actually read this graph and get some actual insight from it. Moving down, you'll notice that the axis no longer has numbers, and this is exactly why I think this is a lackluster step. You go through all the effort of making some fancy website, and then you're not even actually telling me how many numbers you got. The only thing that you're able to tell me is that 1223 was a little bit more than 26, was a little bit more than 1129, I guess. And what's funny about that is that I'm pretty sure they're missing a week in between 12/6 and 12/23. So unless PSA was closed or wasn't accepting stuff for that particular week, it really doesn't make sense why they would skip a week, whereas every other week was sequential. So again, right off the bat, if we're looking at the analytical part of this website, there's really not much insight to get from this. All this means is that they've been receiving packages, and the funny part is you couldn't even tell me how many packages they've received in any given day, which is again pointless. If you're going to be more transparent and provide more recent updates, A, you need to be transparent by putting numbers here, and B, you probably need to be more timely than at this time 2+ months back. So, a lot could be said for PSA's website right now. It looks snappy, but meh. Now, in terms of initiatives, PSA is taking a three-pronged approach to growing capacity. So the first is hiring, and they say they have done 100 new employees. The real question is, are there 100 new graders on staff? How many of those graders are able to contribute to work right now? Are these graders being held to a higher standard, or are cards being graded by people with 10 years of experience and 10 weeks of experience? The second is lean principles. So they're basically saying, you know, they're going to adopt these changes, including things like room configurations and triaging of orders, in order to sort of speed up their process. Here's my issue with this. The major bottleneck and the real value additive component of sending my cards to PSA is not about processing my cards or researching or identifying my cards. Chances are, if I'm sending it into PSA, I already know what the card is and what it's worth. Therefore, I'm sending it in to be graded. And so, this is just my opinion, all of the lean principles here shouldn't really focus on everything that leads up to the grading. Realistically, I think if they should be focusing on re-innovating or, you know, using Kaizen to really kind of improve their business processes, I think the main focus should be on grading, right? It should be more objective-based, uniform styles of grading. And you know what? If it takes 10 seconds to get this stuff, you know, into the room, and they want to move tables around in the room to make sure that people can reach each other more quickly and work stuff in an assembly line, that's quite all right. But my major issue is that I think they're focusing on the wrong things. And folks who are into design engineering and folks that work in process engineering will probably share a similar sentiment with me, mainly because you got to look at what drives value for your business. You don't send your cards into PSA for anything other than grading and authentication. So that's where you should be focusing a lot of your effort and attention. Initiative 3 is robotics, and all I can do is really scoff at this. Apparently, and I've covered this before, you know, they now have a robotic arm that's going to grab your package and send it on its way. Interestingly enough, they also introduced a new barcode that goes on the outside of your package. So in addition to your mailing label, you now include a barcode that PSA uses to identify your package and scan it in. They also have an automated email system. My issue with the robotics is that, again, sounds like you spent a lot of money on a mechanical arm when you could have spent the same amount of money or perhaps a little bit more, but made a real investment. So there are some companies out there, believe it or not, that are using artificial intelligence and something called optical character recognition, or OCR. It's a great way for a robot to identify images and text on a, you know, document, on a piece of paper, dare I say, a trading card. And by using optical character recognition, the machine can actually learn to identify different documents. The same is true here. So if PSA had wanted to, they could have used OCR to drive a process where the machine quickly identifies the card and then matches it against the order form that the customer fills out. But instead, they've just chosen to buy a robotic arm that will grab packages and move them from one work stream to another. Again, I really raise the question of what the goal behind this stuff is. I really don't think they have that focus right now. They're saying, you know, we're going to buy stuff, we're going to put it up on the website, it's going to look cool and fun and quirky and perky. But at the end of the day, when you take a real long look at it, you begin realizing that there might have been better opportunities elsewhere. Or, you know, with slight modification that really would have made a difference to the overall PSA process. Now, of course, in addition to this, they have this continuous improvement section where, again, the only thing they're saying is that quarter over quarter, they've been getting quicker about the way that they're shipping units. But notice something. There's no axis labels over here. So again, we're left with no idea what these numbers mean. The only thing I can tell you is that they've been getting bigger, but I can't tell you by how much. I can't tell you what the numbers are or if they're even significant. It could be 1,000 and then it could be 1,500 units. And there's really no way of discerning that information based on what they've shown us here. So in the grand scheme of things, while it appears to be more transparent because it is something new and fun, at the end of the day, it's actually not transparent at all because there's nothing we can actually learn from looking at this chart that we wouldn't already know. The newest section is the complete through section. So they're basically saying, you know, here is the most recent. So for every service level, they have the items that they've logged into the system. But again, I really want to challenge everyone watching the video to think right now, is it more important to know what the most recent package logged into the system is, or is it more important to know what is the most recent that they've shipped out? I would argue it's the second of those options. So I really don't need to know that, you've completed my July 10th submission. Instead, I would want to know, are you backed up from April of 2020? Because that means if I'm in May of 2020, I have a pretty good idea that my item might get shipped in the next, coming months. But unfortunately, this really doesn't add much value, because the real question isn't, oh, when are you going to enter my set of cards into the customer service portal? The real question is, when am I going to get my cards back? And answering the question of the last shipped is going to be a better way of identifying that than by telling me, oh, hey, for economy, we're backed up from August 16th, 2020. This really just doesn't tell me much of anything. Now, of course, there are, a whole bunch of other things. They're now, they have this really nice page and they kind of show you some other stuff, which again, I appreciate. But as you can see, I approach this particular page with a lot of apprehensivity. I really just don't think it's a very good page at all. It doesn't offer any real insight. And frankly, it just looks to me like a great way to distract and a great way to keep people busy checking this page for updates while they work through their backlog. At the end of the day, I think the resources that they've called out here could have been better invested and better used. And frankly, in my opinion at least, this page leaves a lot to be desired as a paying customer. Now, in addition to that, the one other thing is the new service levels. So in case you missed it, prices have been going up and grading cards is not as cheap as it once was. Now, this is important for two things. One, it's a pretty genius move by PSA, and hopefully with all that more money, they should be able to finally take the advice of some of the more standard types of business gurus in the industry and, invest in things that will benefit their grading process. So, regular used to be $20 per card. It's now $100, as you can see on screen. Super Express used to be, I think, $75. It's now $300. Walkthrough used to be, I think, $300. Now it's $600. Whatever the case is, I can tell you without a doubt, all of these prices have increased, and by a large number. So this raises a very interesting question. One, what's going to happen to PSA? Now, when it comes to PSA, I can see this as one of two possible outcomes. The first is going to be a situation where cards continue to come in at the same velocity that they have been, in which case, assuming most people submit using the regular, PSA is going to be making about 5 times the revenue. And mind you, in April of 2020, they were already saying business was too good for them to keep up with. So if, the current velocity of cards continues at its current rate, they're going to be making bank. And again, with that additional money, hopefully they will start investing in some more advanced machinery and, additional locations and other things like that that will greatly expand their capability to work through the backlog. Now, in addition to that, the second possible outcome is that card submissions slow down because all of a sudden it's either too expensive or not profitable enough for cards to be sent in with the same velocity that they have been over the past year and a half. In a situation like that, the one thing that I will say is that it's actually perfect because PSA is going to have more time to deal with the current volume of cards as well as the backlog that they have been accumulating over the past couple of years. So with any luck, they'll be able to move through that product because the current incoming number of cards has dropped, and hopefully we'll see their turnaround times as well as their prices sort of regulate for the long term in the future. And of course, the one other item up for discussion is certainly going to have to be the thing that everyone has really been talking about, from SM Pratt to Squeaks to a whole bunch of folks on, other areas of the internet like Reddit and Facebook, is what the increasing prices mean for the junk slab era. So in case you're unfamiliar, a junk slab era is a time in a hobby, doesn't have to be Pokemon, but we've certainly had a fair share of them, where every card gets graded. It's a huge trend recently where everything gets graded. And the idea is that, typically, some cards would warrant it. Your vintage, your holographic, your ultra rares. And then there are other cards that really don't need to get graded. The very frequent and popular example is the Crimson Invasion Rayquaza card, which sold recently on eBay for about $91. Now, realistically, it doesn't sound like a lot of money because, again, we have cards flying around for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in this hobby at this point. But the problem is that $91 is actually a lot because when you think about it, that card is probably 50 cents to $1. And if you buy them in enough volume, you could submit them at PSA's lower service levels and make a real big amount of money. Now, that is the definition of a junk slab era, because there's enough demand where you can no longer afford the expensive, legitimate stuff, and so people move on to these lesser cards, realizing that, hey, they may not be the first edition Charizards or even the full art Rainbow Rare Charizards from Burning Shadows, but by golly, it's a holographic from the Sun and Moon era, and we're in the Sword and Shield era, so it's worth paying that much. I always say it like this. I list stuff up for auction because the market then dictates what people are willing to pay. No one can accuse me of inflating the price because I can't participate in my own bid. And so there's a really interesting dynamic that happens when, maybe you had a few of these cards, you throw them in your PSA submission, a couple of them come back as 10s, you throw them up for auction, and then happenstantially, they sell for a lot of money. And in this case, that's exactly what happened with the Rayquaza. That's exactly why everyone's looking at it, scratching their head, because it's the definition of a junk slab. There's really no reason to have it. There's no long-term reason why that card should be worth a stupid amount of money. And yet, for some reason, $91 is the market rate for that card. Someone valued it at that much and purchased it for that much. So, does PSA's increasing prices signal the end of the junk slab era? Yes and yes. So, the trick is that it's my opinion that a lot of business that has gone to PSA and all the other grading companies, by the way, over the past year has been in response to the junk slab era. It's possible to rip a whole bunch of packs, get a whole bunch of rares graded, turn around and make a good profit. And because of that, you decide to do this as sort of a side hustle. And if enough people do it, PSA gets inundated with cards. And let's be real, the demand for graded cards has been high, the Pokemon market has been insane, and over the past year, it made a lot of sense in order to do this and make some good money on the side. The problem is that when PSA raises the value of their prices, takes away free vouchers, and stops doing value grading services, then all of a sudden it becomes infinitely less profitable to do this as a side hustle. So now they're effectively controlling the rate at which these cards will go out onto the market because there's a huge hurdle to jump. You need to make a good investment, and frankly, with $100 in costs just associated with grading at the regular level, plus the at least 12-week delay, you're already looking at about 3 months of delay in addition to the time it takes to grade, plus 5 times the amount of fixed costs when it comes to grading these cards. And when you put all of that together, it's a pretty lethal combination that's pretty much going to guarantee that unless you're grading vintage, unless you're in it for the collection and not necessarily for the profitability perspective, or unless you have some sort of secret, formula that's going to guarantee every card gets a 10 and for a fact the market's going up, this creates a huge hurdle to a lot of those types of individuals submitting cards. And I guess if you love the hobby enough, you'll probably put some cards to the side and hold them and wait for the next time it's okay to submit cards at a lesser price. But for those individuals who have effectively been flipping cards on the market after getting them graded, this is effectively a deadbolt that will stop them from sort of opening that door again for a little bit, which again is a good way to control the overall market and also make sure that, you know, all the grading companies can do a little bit of catch up and a little bit of process re-innovation. But with that said, friends, thanks again for checking out today's video. I do hope that you found today's video a little informational. Of course, I give PSA a hard time, but that's because I really do like their stuff. I really do like their process, and I really do appreciate them. And I'm not just saying that because I have mainly PSA cards in my collection, but because I do genuinely think, you know, they provide a valuable service. And that goes the same with BGS and CGC. It just so happens that as long as I've been a collector, PSA has been my go-to source for this type of stuff. And so I do have a little bit of an attachment to them, and I do want to make sure that they're doing better for the future. Unfortunately, you know, it remains to be seen how all of this is going to work out. Obviously, BGS and CGC are seeing many of the same problems. The only difference is that PSA hasn't been very good about their website, and that's why this video needed to be made and these things needed to be said. Other than that, friends, I hope you're having a great Tuesday. One thing of note is that this week I will not be available. So all the videos you're seeing are obviously pre-recorded, as they always are, but I may be less sort of responsive. I'm just taking care of some stuff personally. Everything's fine. It's just, you know, business as usual. But obviously I do need to take a little bit of personal time for myself. So if I'm a little slow to respond to comments, please be mindful of that, but rest assured I will get back to you as early as Saturday of this week, if not sooner. Other than that, I hope you all are having a great day. Thanks as always for checking out another video. You could have been anywhere on the internet, but you chose to spend some time with me, and that means the world. Other than that, I shall talk to you guys soon, and we'll catch up later. Peace.